At my graduation dinner, my mother lifted her glass and smiled for the photos. Then she leaned across the table, past the steak knives and the fake congratulations, and whispered, "We wish you were never born." Everyone laughed, like it was a joke I was supposed to understand. 3 years later, I walked into her company's boardroom with a different kind of toast, and a key that would end her reign in public. My name is Arden Cole. I am 25 years old, and I am sitting at the Stonebrook Grill, holding a bachelor's degree in accounting and control systems that feels like a block of ice in my lap. The restaurant is aggressively warm, soft. Yellow lights are designed to make everyone look better than they feel, gleaming off dark wood panels and heavy steak knives. In the center of the table, propped up against a vase of sterile lilies, is my graduation photo. It's a prop, just like the empty congratulations, just like the smiles fixed on the faces of my extended family. Across from me sits my mother, Helena Cole. She is the CEO of Meridian Harvest Foods, a title she wears like the custom-tailored blazer that rests perfectly on her shoulders. Her smile is her primary weapon, and tonight it is deployed at full strength for the benefit of her audience, our aunts, uncles, and her husband, my stepfather. Her diamond watch, a discreetly expensive Cartier, catches the flicker of the candlelight and throws tiny, sharp slivers of light across the table. "To Arden," she says, lifting her champagne flute. The crystal rings with a clear, perfect note. On finally completing her degree, we are all so very proud. The table echoes her. Proud. To Arden. Finally. I manage the smile I've been practicing. It's the grateful daughter smile. One that doesn't show teeth. One that doesn't reach the eyes. I lift my own glass of water. The applause is polite, brittle, as it dies down. Helena sets her glass on the white linen. The table is wide, laden with the debris of a $200-a-head meal. She leans forward. The scent of her perfume, something expensive and sharp, like crushed pepper and roses, cuts through the smell of seared filet mignon. She smiles that camera-ready smile again. Then, in a voice pitched just below the ambient murmur of the restaurant, a voice meant only for me but loud enough to be undeniable, she whispers, "We wish you were never born." Time doesn't stop. The camera doesn't zoom. Instead, the world sharpens. I can suddenly hear everything. The clink of my uncle's fork against his plate 3 seats down, the sigh of the air conditioning vent above us, the specific, wet sound of my stepfather clearing his throat. Then, the worst part, they laugh. Not a full laugh, but a series of quick, supportive chuckles. My aunt pats Helena's hand, as if she's just told a witty, inside joke that I, the subject, am supposed to understand and appreciate, a joke about my own existence. I look at my stepfather, Robert. He is a man who exists in Helena's shadow, pale and accommodating. He doesn't laugh. He does something worse. He pulls out his phone, his thumb immediately scrolling, his brow furrowed in a pantomime of urgent business. He is busy. He is not here. He did not hear. My own hands are steady. They rest on my lap, on top of my purse. I feel the cold, smooth glass of my phone. I don't look down. My movements are economical, practiced. I slide the phone from my purse and, in one fluid motion, place it on the table, leaning it against my heavy water glass. The screen faces the glass, its light trapped and diffused, invisible. But the microphone, at the bottom edge, is clear. It is pointed directly at my mother. I had already pressed record the moment she started her toast. I am an auditor, by training and by nature. I document. My mother sits back, satisfied. She takes a delicate sip of her champagne, her diamond watch flashing, her power absolute. She has drawn blood, and the wound is invisible. The waiter arrives with dessert, a complimentary slice of chocolate lava cake for the graduate, a single candle sputtering in its center. "Make a wish, darling," my aunt coos, already angling her phone for the picture. I look at the small flame. My mother is watching me, that benign smile still in place. She is waiting for me to break, to cry, to make a scene. That is what she wants. A public display of my weakness, a confirmation of her power. I will not give it to her. I blow out the candle. The small trail of smoke smells like burnt sugar. As the waiter clears the plates, he places the check discreetly in a black leather folder and sets it directly in front of Helena. She doesn't even look at it. She slides her corporate American Express card, the black one, issued to Helena Cole, CEO, Meridian Harvest Foods, into the sleeve. When the waiter returns, I ask him for a pen, as if to write a note. He hands me one, and as I pretend to scribble on a napkin, my eyes lock on the itemized receipt slip he's left for her. My accounting training takes over, an automatic reflex. My eyes scan the total, just over $2,800 for 10 people, and then the memo line at the bottom of the merchant copy, where she'd had to sign. In Helena's elegant, decisive script, team building. My breath catches, not a gasp, just a hitch. Team building. She was writing off my graduation dinner, the very dinner where she just told me she wished I'd never been born. As a corporate expense, the fraud is so blatant, so arrogant. It's almost beautiful. I commit the date, the amount, and the lie to memory. It's a data point, the first of many. I don't leave the table. I don't excuse myself to the restroom to cry. I sit there, and I eat the goddamned cake. I take a bite of the rich, dark chocolate, and I swallow. I swallow the cake. I swallow the insult. I swallow the rage. It all goes down, lodging somewhere deep in my chest, and the sweetness of the frosting tastes like metal. It tastes like pennies and iron. "One more picture," my uncle insists, pulling out his bulky DSLR. "Everyone together, Arden in the middle. You're the star." We stand. Helena puts her arm around my shoulder. Her touch is light, proprietary. The heavy gold of her bracelet is cold against my skin. The camera flash is blinding. "Smile, Arden," she murmurs, her voice warm for the camera. I look at the lens, and just before the flash goes off, I turn my head slightly, just a few degrees to the left, a subtle shift. When the photo is developed, I will not be looking at the camera. I will be just off-center, my smile not quite aligned with everyone else's. I am no longer in the center of their frame. The drive home is silent. Robert drives, the dashboard lights painting his face in green and blue. Helena is in the passenger seat, texting, the screen of her phone illuminating her satisfied expression. I am in the back, a ghost in their peripheral vision. When we get to the house, her house, Robert's house, never mine, I go straight to my room. I don't say goodnight. They don't notice. My room is sparse, functional. It's the room of a person who was never meant to stay. On my desk, next to my packed suitcases for the move to my new apartment, is a single, thick envelope of heavy cardstock. It's been there for a week, since I turned 25. It was sent by my grandfather's attorney, per the instructions in his will. My grandfather, Walter, was Helena's father, the man who actually started Meridian Harvest Foods from his own kitchen, long before Helena put her face on the brand. He died 3 years ago. I slit the envelope. My hands are not shaking. They are perfectly still. Inside, there is no card, no congratulatory note, just 2 items. The first is a key, old, iron, heavy. It's a skeleton key, the kind for a heavy-duty lock, not a door. A tag is attached by a thin wire. Norcrest Storage, B12. The second is a document, folded into quarters. The paper is thick, yellowed at the creases. I unfold it. It's a stock certificate. The header reads, Meridian Harvest Foods, Inc., Certificate of Founding Stock. It certifies that 12% of the company's founding shares are issued to Arden M. Cole, to be held in trust and delivered upon her 21st birthday. I am 25. This is 4 years late. But that's not the part that makes my heart stop and restart, beating with a new, cold rhythm. Stapled to the back is a single addendum, signed by my grandfather and a notary public, a clause I've never heard of, a clause Helena has certainly never mentioned. It states that this 12% share, representing the original Coal and Rivers 1998 partnership, contains a contingency protocol. The bearer of this certificate holds the right to convert this 12% minority stake into a 51% temporary controlling interest, full voting rights, under one specific condition: the discovery and proof of financial malfeasance or fraud that directly impacts or endangers public food safety. Attached to the certificate is a small, folded note, in my grandfather's spidery handwriting. Arden, it reads, "Don't show this to anyone until you truly need to. Some people build things, and some people just put their name on them. Know which one you are. P.S. Team building always hides the most." I look at the key. I look at the certificate. I think of the receipt sitting in a landfill or a credit card processing center, stamped team building. I slide my phone out of my pocket. I stop the recording. I save the file, naming it Graduation Dinner Audio 0522. I plug the phone into my laptop and create a new encrypted folder. I drag the audio file in. I sit there, in the quiet of my room, the smell of chocolate and metal still on my tongue. My mother wished I was never born. I pick up the iron key, feeling its weight in my palm. She is about to wish it a whole lot more. Practical. That was the word Helena Cole always used for me. It wasn't a compliment. It was a container, a label affixed to a box she intended to store in the attic. Arden is just so wonderfully practical. It meant I was sensible, grounded. It meant I understood budgets. I was good at math, and I didn't cause trouble. It meant I was the beige carpet, the drywall, the foundation, necessary, but entirely unseen. Her son, my stepbrother Jasper, was never practical. Jasper was brilliant. Jasper was brilliant when he got a C+ in economics because, as Helena explained it, he was challenging the professor's antiquated models. I was practical when I got an A in advanced accounting because I had a good head for numbers. Jasper was brilliant when he proposed a new logo for Meridian Harvest Foods that cost $150,000 and was ultimately rejected by the board. I was practical when I suggested a change in their freight carrier that saved them $500,000, a suggestion that was absorbed, implemented, and never mentioned again. Arden just doesn't understand how the real world works, she'd say, typically at cocktail parties or holiday dinners, swirling a glass of Cabernet that cost more than my weekly food budget. She'd tap her temple with a perfectly manicured finger. She's all numbers, no vision. She was half right. I was all numbers. But vision is useless if you can't pay the bills. And I was the only one in that house who ever bothered to read the fine print on the receipts. The proof of this dynamic wasn't just in her words. It was hung in the hallway of the Norcrest house. Helena called it the family gallery, but it was really the gallery of Helena and her brilliant son. It was a long, dimly lit corridor connecting the main foyer to the grand room, lined with matching brushed gold frames, each one spotlit from the ceiling. In the center, the largest frame, Helena, radiant in a blue dress, her arm around a teenage Jasper at some charity gala. He had her smile, her easy confidence. To the left, Jasper, age 10, holding a ridiculous sailing trophy, his hair perfectly tousled by the wind. To the right, Jasper, in a cap and gown from a prep school that cost more than my state college education, laughing as he pretended to bite his diploma. And then there was me. I was there, of course. Helena was nothing if not thorough in her performance of family. My photos were smaller. They were always at the ends of the hallway, near the doorway or the light switch. Me at a high school debate tournament, slightly out of focus, my mouth open in the middle of a point. Me at my high school graduation, standing next to a potted fern, in every single photograph. I was at the edge of the frame. I was the bookend, the context, the required but unread appendix to the main story of Helena and Jasper. That gallery was a perfect metaphor for Meridian Harvest Foods. Helena's face was on the website, her story in the About Us section, her signature stylized on the labels of the organic pasta sauce and the frozen gluten-free meals. Helena Cole's Meridian. But Meridian didn't start in a boardroom. It didn't start with Helena's MBA. It started in my grandmother's kitchen, a cramped, humid room that always smelled of simmering tomatoes and oregano. My grandmother and my grandfather, Walter, built it. They drove to farmers' markets at 4 a.m. They hand-labeled jars. I found a box of those original labels once, in the attic I was cleaning, a practical summer task. The label read, Cole and Rivers Garden Harvest. Rivers was my grandmother's maiden name. When Walter, my grandfather, was still alive. I once found a draft of an old press release from 1998, tucked inside a ledger book he was teaching me to balance. The letterhead was Cole and Rivers, and the text called Walter co-founder and Helena head of marketing. When I asked Helena about it, she'd waved her hand dismissively, the diamonds on her ring catching the light. "Oh, that," she said, not even looking up from her laptop. "That was just a souvenir from your grandfather's hobby. He was never serious about the business side of things. He was serious enough to leave me that key. He was serious enough to write that contingency clause. While I went to state college and got my accounting degree, Jasper was fast-tracked. He got an internship at a private equity firm that just happened to be one of Meridian's biggest investors. After he graduated, with his brilliant C+, he was given a title at Meridian, Director of Strategic Initiatives. As far as I could tell, strategic initiatives meant he sat in high-level meetings with his mother, used words like synergy and optimization, and agreed with whatever she said. I, on the other hand, took a job in the internal audit department of a small-time logistics firm in Norcrest. It was dull, it was meticulous, it was beige, and it was the best education I could have ever received. I wasn't just checking numbers. I was learning the architecture of deceit. I learned how a procurement manager could create a ghost vendor. I learned how travel expenses could mask payoffs. I learned how a signature, applied at the wrong time or by the wrong person, could unravel an entire quarter. We had a family group chat. The standing rule, sent by Helena herself in a crisp, sans serif font, was, "Let's please keep work at the office. Family time is sacred." This rule was, of course, a lie. Family time was Sunday night dinner. It wasn't sacred. It was mandatory. We'd sit at the same massive mahogany dining table from my graduation dinner. Robert, my stepfather, would nurse a single beer, and Helena and Jasper would hold an unofficial board meeting. "The new packaging for the frozen line is testing well in the focus groups," Jasper would announce, passing bread. "Good," Helena would nod. "But what's the cost per unit impact? Borden Lake seems worried." Borden Lake was the CFO. "We're smoothing it out in the Q3 logistics budget," Jasper would reply. Sometimes, I'd ask a question. "Are you amortizing the R&D cost for that packaging over 2 years or 3? Because the new FDA guidelines on material sourcing might shorten its shelf life." An uncomfortable silence would fall. Helena would sigh, a small, pained sound. "Arden, darling, let's not get bogged down in the weeds. This is strategy." Jasper would just smirk, taking a bite of roast beef. "Don't worry about it, Arden. We've got the bean counters for that." I'd just nod. Right, the weeds. And I'd go back to my meal, watching them. Watching the way Helena's eyes would flick to Jasper for approval. Watching the way Robert would meticulously fold his napkin, again and again, desperate to be invisible. Helena was wrong. I did understand how the world works, just not her world. Her world ran on optics, on handshakes, on who had the most confident voice, on believing your own press releases. My world ran on different rules. I understood that power wasn't just about vision. Power ran on signatures. It ran on purchase orders and wire transfer confirmations. It ran on the specific, unglamorous details that everyone else was too bored, too arrogant, or too lazy to read. I learned to read invoices the way they read the Wall Street Journal. I learned to read budgets the way they read corporate strategy reports. And I learned to read the evasive look in a manager's eyes when his travel receipts didn't match his meeting schedule. For 25 years, I had been silent. I had been practical. I had stayed at the edge of the frame. But silence isn't always submission. Sometimes it's observation. Sometimes it's the meticulous, patient winding of a spring. That night, after the graduation dinner, as I held that cold iron key in one hand and the 1998 stock certificate in the other, I finally understood my grandfather's last lesson. Helena and Jasper saw the world as a stage. I saw it as a ledger, and after that dinner, for the first time in my life, I knew, with absolute certainty, their accounts were not balanced. And I was the only one who knew how to conduct the audit. The string that had been pulled taut for my entire life was ready. It was finally ready to play its note. The audio file from the graduation dinner was a raw wound, an accusation. The key in my hand was a weapon, cold and heavy. I waited 3 days. 3 days of moving into my new, sterile apartment across town. 3 days of unpacking boxes, arranging my practical, secondhand furniture, and ignoring the single, "Hope you're settling in" text from Robert, which was clearly dictated by Helena. On the 4th day, a Saturday, I drove to Norcrest Storage. It wasn't a modern, climate-controlled facility. It was an old single-story sprawl of corrugated metal units on the industrial side of town, smelling of truck exhaust and damp cement. The kind of place where things went to be forgotten, not just stored. The key my grandfather had left me felt ancient in my palm. It was heavy, pitted iron, not a slick, modern tumbler key. The tag, B12, was handwritten in his familiar, spidery script. I found the unit at the end of a long, dim corridor, lit by buzzing fluorescent bulbs. The air was still and thick with the smell of old paper, dust, and something metallic, like rust. B12. The roll-up door was secured by a heavy, old-fashioned padlock that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. I slid the iron key into the lock. It resisted, gritty with disuse. I had to put my shoulder into it, turning with a force that scraped my knuckles against the cold metal. There was a loud, protesting clack that echoed in the concrete hallway. The lock sprang open. I rolled up the metal door. It shrieked in protest, sending a small shower of rust flakes onto my shoulders. The space inside was small, maybe 10 by 10. It was dark. I used the flashlight app on my phone. The beam cut through the darkness and landed on a single object in the center of the dusty concrete floor. It wasn't a stack of furniture or a pile of forgotten boxes. It was an iron box, a small safe, old and black, about the size of a shoebox. It looked less like a modern safe and more like something from a pirate ship, bound with metal straps. On the lid, pressed into a crumbling red wax seal, were 2 words, barely legible: Coal and Rivers, and beneath it, a date, 1998. My breath hitched. This was the original partnership, the one Helena had dismissed as a hobby. The safe wasn't locked with a key. It was secured by 2 simple latches. This wasn't meant to keep thieves out. It was meant to keep the contents preserved. It was a time capsule. I clicked open the latches. The hinges groaned. A metallic sigh. I lifted the heavy lid. The smell of dry paper and old ink hit me first. Inside, resting on a bed of faded velvet, were 3 items. The first, on top, was the stock certificate I had already seen, the one delivered by the lawyer. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the embossed paper. 12%, 12%. Arden M. Cole, to be held in trust. The second was the addendum, the contingency clause. I read it again, my auditor's brain dissecting the legal language. In the event of documented financial malfeasance, directly impacting or endangering public food safety, this 12% minority stake shall be immediately convertible, at the bearer's sole discretion, into a 51% temporary controlling interest for the purposes of initiating corrective action and ensuring regulatory compliance. It was a poison pill, a dead man's switch. My grandfather, the man Helena dismissed as not serious about business, had embedded a corporate bomb deep in the company's founding articles. He had anticipated a moment exactly like this. He had anticipated her. The third item was a notebook, a simple, black, leather-bound ledger. the kind accountants used before everything went digital. I opened it. The first page was in his handwriting. To Arden, it began. If you are reading this, you are 21 and you need it. Do not tell anyone you have this until you are sure. Not until you truly need to. I was 25 and I truly needed it. I turned the page. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger of a different kind. It was a list of my grandfather's suspicions. Date, May 14, 2002. H, approved new supplier for tomatoes. Price 15% below market. Quality checks look thin. Need to verify. Date, September 10, 2003. Shipping manifests for frozen line don't match invoices. H says it's a software glitch. It's not. And then, I saw the entry that made the blood freeze in my veins. Date, June 5, 2005. H submitted an expense report for $4,000. Team building dinner. It was for Robert's birthday party. She's getting arrogant. She's mixing the money. This is how it starts. Team building expenses often hide the most. They're a slush fund for arrogance. My graduation dinner. 28,800, team building. My grandfather hadn't just been suspicious. He had been documenting. He had seen the pattern, the seed of the fraud. 20 years ago, he had been watching his own daughter, and he had been building this ark, this weapon, for me. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, vibrating energy. I sat on the dusty concrete floor of Unit B12 for a long time. I read every entry in the notebook. He had detailed his attempts to instill safeguards, and how Helena had systematically dismantled them in the name of modernization and efficiency after he retired. I closed the notebook, I placed it, the certificate, and the addendum into my briefcase. I did not leave the originals. I drove to a 24-hour copy shop. For 2 hours, I worked. I was methodical. I scanned every single page of the notebook, every line of the certificate, every word of the addendum. I saved them to an encrypted USB drive, which I then saved to a secure cloud server, which I then saved to another encrypted drive that I would keep in a bank vault. I made 3 high-resolution color copies of the original documents. I went back to the storage unit. I placed the copies back in the iron box. I put the original documents in my briefcase. I resealed the wax on the box using a lighter, melting it just enough to stick. It wouldn't hold up to scrutiny, but a casual observer wouldn't notice. I closed the heavy lid, latched it, snapped the old padlock shut, and pulled the humming metal door down. The clack of the lock sealing was final. I went home, I made coffee, and at 9:00 a.m. on Monday morning, I made a call. Law offices of Maya Trent. How may I help you? I had found Maya Trent's name in a legal journal article about minority shareholder rights. She was based in Norcrest, but she was independent. She had no ties to Meridian, its investors, or its board. She was known for being a shark and for representing founders who had been pushed out of their own companies. My name is Arden Cole. I need to schedule a consultation with Ms. Trent regarding a founding stock certificate and a shareholder agreement addendum for a privately held corporation. Her assistant was all business. Ms. Trent is available in 2 weeks. I have the documents in my possession, I said, my voice flat, cold. And they contain a time-sensitive contingency clause related to potential fraud. I need 1 hour, today. There was a pause, the clacking of a keyboard. Can you hold, Ms. Cole? 2 minutes later, a new voice was on the line, sharp, precise, no nonsense. This is Maya Trent. What corporation? Meridian Harvest Foods. Silence. I could hear her processing the name. The biggest private employer in Norcrest. Helena Cole's empire. My office, 4:00. Bring everything, she said, and hung up. Maya Trent's office was not like Helena's. There was no brushed gold or dark wood. It was functional. Steel, glass, and shelves overflowing with binders. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She didn't offer me coffee. She just pointed to a chair. Show me. I didn't speak. I laid the original stock certificate, the addendum, and my grandfather's notebook on her desk. She picked up the certificate first, then the addendum. She read it once, then she read it again, her finger tracing the lines. Her expression was unreadable. "This is an aggressive clause," she said, her voice neutral. "Is it legal?" "It's creative and highly unusual, but based on the founding partnership agreement, yes." She tapped the paper. "This conversion right is triggered by proof of fraud, not just suspicion. Documented financial malfeasance. That's a very high bar." "I know. And it must be tied to food safety, not just regular, run-of-the-mill expense account cheating." "I understand." She finally looked up at me, her gaze analytical, as if she were auditing me. "Helena Cole is your mother." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "She is unaware of this document. She believes my grandfather's original shares were bought out and dissolved into the general pool in 2004. "And were they?" "According to this certificate, they were placed in trust for me, without her knowledge, as part of the original Cole and Rivers 1998 incorporation. It looks like he never told her he carved out 12% for me before she did her first big corporate restructuring." Maya nodded, a slow, predatory smile just barely touching her lips. "He used her own ambition against her. She was in such a hurry to create Meridian that she forgot to audit the Cole and Rivers books. She just dissolved what she thought was the whole company. But she missed this. Your grandfather never signed off on dissolving this specific share. It's still active. It's been sitting here, a ghost in her system, for over 20 years. She stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the Norcrest skyline. The Meridian Tower was the tallest building in view. "She has no idea," Maya whispered, almost to herself. "She controls the board, the investors, everything. But this document, it's a bypass. It's a key to the entire kingdom. And she doesn't even know the lock exists." She turned back to me. "You're an auditor. You know what you need to do. A dinner receipt isn't enough. Your grandfather's notebook is context. But it's not proof. You need current, actionable, undeniable evidence. You need a smoking gun that's still hot." "I know," I said. "This means you need to get inside." My heart, which had been beating with a slow, cold dread, suddenly changed its rhythm. It wasn't a human heartbeat. It was the sound of a high-speed currency counter. Thwack, 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 thwack. A rapid, precise, mechanical processing of what was to come. I stood up and gathered my documents. "I'll be in touch. Ms. Trent, I need to get the proof." As I walked to the door, her voice stopped me. "Ms. Cole, why are you doing this? This is your family. This is your mother." I paused, my hand on the steel doorknob. I thought of the restaurant, the smell of steak, the candlelight flashing on a diamond watch. I thought of the laughter. "We wish you were never born." "She said the same thing," I replied, and walked out. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat as the sun set. I looked at the encrypted USB drive in my hand. I looked at my grandfather's notebook on the passenger seat. I whispered to the empty car, "Thank you, Grandpa. I know exactly what to do." The job posting on the Meridian Harvest Foods career portal was laughably corporate. Management accountant. It called for a detail-oriented team player with a passion for fiscal transparency. I tailored my resume, emphasizing my practical experience at the logistics firm. I highlighted my skills in expense report auditing and vendor cost-benefit analysis. I was, on paper, the most boring, competent, and unthreatening accountant in Norcrest. I applied online at 10 p.m. I had a call from HR by 9:15 a.m. the next morning. The interview was a formality, but a telling one. The HR director, a woman with aggressively stylish eyeglasses and a bright, fixed smile, sat across from me in a glass-walled conference room. "So, Arden," she said, leaning forward as if sharing a secret, "it's not often we get an applicant with, well, such a close connection to our family. We're thrilled. Here at Meridian, we really are a family, you know, and our number one value, above all else, is transparency." I believe in transparent systems, I said, my voice perfectly flat. Clear ledgers are the bedrock of a good business. I'm eager to bring my skills here. Wonderful, she beamed. Helena will be so pleased. Of course, she already knew. The call came an hour later, not from HR, but from Helena's private assistant. Ms. Cole would like to see you in her office, at your convenience, of course, which meant now. The Meridian Tower was all glass and brushed steel, a monument to Helena's vision. Her office was on the top floor, a corner suite that looked down on the entire city. She wasn't behind her desk when I entered. She was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out. Arden, she said, turning. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were calculating. HR tells me you've applied for a position, a management accountant. She let the title hang in the air, waited with her disapproval. After all that schooling, darling, isn't that a bit junior? I always saw you aiming higher, something more strategic. It seems practical, I said, using her own word, her weapon. I want to build a solid career from the ground up. I want to learn the fundamentals. I thought, I'd like to be closer to the family business. I watched her process this. The suspicion in her eyes faded, replaced by something else. Satisfaction. She saw this as a surrender, the prodigal daughter, the practical, difficult child, finally coming home to the fold. I was no longer a threat. I was an asset to be managed. You want to be closer to me, she translated, her smile becoming genuine. That's wonderful, darling. Good. You start Monday. I'll let HR know. I was dismissed. As I was walking toward the elevator bank, Jasper stepped out of a conference room. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my car. His hair artfully messy. Director of Strategic Initiatives. Arden, he said, his voice booming with false enthusiasm. He walked over and clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that was less a welcome and more a assertion of dominance. It was a solid, painful hit. Heard you were joining the bean counters. Good for you. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, smelling of expensive cologne and coffee. Welcome to where the adults play. Little sis, try to keep up. I just nodded, fixing my grateful daughter's smile in place. Looking forward to learning from you, Jasper. He laughed, a sharp barking sound, and strode away. My first day was onboarding. I sat in a windowless room and filled out tax forms. The last document in the stack was the non-disclosure agreement. It was 12 pages long, a dense forest of legalese about trade secrets, proprietary processes, and the severe financial penalties for disclosure. It was a muzzle. I took a picture of every page with my phone and emailed it to Maya Trent from the bathroom. I called her 2 minutes later. They're waiting for me to sign it, I said. Her voice was quick. Is there any clause about pre-existing knowledge? Or any reference to fiduciary duty as a primary shareholder? I'd already scanned it. No, it's a standard, boilerplate employee agreement. It binds Arden Cole, the employee. Good, Maya said. It doesn't bind Arden Cole, the 12% founding shareholder. As far as they're concerned, that person doesn't exist. An NDA cannot be legally used to conceal a crime. Arden, this is not a shield for them. It's your cover. You're no longer an outside threat they need to watch. You're a trusted employee, one of the family. So sign it, and start remembering everything. I signed it. I was assigned to a senior controller named Michael, a perpetually stressed man with a coffee-stained shirt who seemed terrified of my last name. You're Helena's daughter. Right. Great. Welcome, he stammered, not making eye contact. Look, we're slammed. The CFO, Mr. Lake, wants a tighter grip on T&E and marketing spends. He says they're getting sloppy. We need someone meticulous. He pushed a stack of binders toward me. I'm putting you on vendor contracts, marketing field events, and all community dinners and team-building expenses. It's mostly receipts. Boring. But it has to be done. They had handed me the shovel. They had pointed me to the exact spot where the body was buried. My practical reputation, the label they had used to dismiss me, had just become my greatest asset. For the first 3 weeks, I was the perfect practical employee. I was a ghost. I arrived at 7:55 a.m. I left at 5:02 p.m. I was quiet. I was efficient. I cross-referenced invoices. I found a $42,000 billing error from a shipping supplier. I built a pivot table to track paperclip expenditures. Michael was thrilled. He told Borden Lake I was a natural. I was invisible. And I was building my case. At night, I worked on the real audit. I started with the community dinners and team-building expenses, just as my grandfather's journal had suggested. The file was a disaster of opulence, just as he'd said. Steakhouses, $500 bottles of wine. Client appreciation. Then I did what no one else had the time, patience, or suspicion to do. I requested access to the quality control archives. Michael granted it without a second thought. Cleaning up interdepartmental billing. I'd told him. I opened the QC logs on one screen and the expense report database on the other, and I started to hunt. It didn't take long. I found a team-building dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Chicago. The date was August 10th. The cost was $9,400. The attendees listed Jasper, Borden Lake, the CFO, and the regional QC manager for the Midwest. The expense report was approved by Jasper. I pulled the Midwest QC logs for that week. On August 9th, Lot 74B of Meridian's pre-sliced deli meats, a batch of 20,000 units, was flagged by the plant's sensors for a potential Listeria monocytogenes contamination. Standard protocol, immediate, mandatory hold, secondary lab testing, and a report to the FDA within 24 hours if confirmed. The log read, Aug 9, 1430, Lot 74B flagged, hold initiated. The log then read, Aug 11, 090 quo, Lot 74B retested, cleared, hold released, cleared for shipment. The dinner, the $9,400 dinner, it happened on August 10th. During the hold, Jasper and the CFO were dining with the exact man whose job it was to sign off on that hold. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just expense fraud. This was it. This was the contingency clause. This was public food safety. I kept digging. I found another one, a community dinner at an exclusive steakhouse in Atlanta. September 4th. Cost, $7,200. Attendees, Helena Cole, Jasper, Borden Lake, and the Southeast QC manager, the corresponding QC log, Lot 81A, cured sausages, flagged for E. coli contamination on September 3rd. The dinner was on September 4th. The log entry, Sept 5, 0830, Lot 81A cleared, administrative error, hold released. It was a pattern. It was a system. They weren't just fudging expenses. They were using corporate funds, the team-building slush fund, to wine, dine, and pressure their own quality control managers into releasing potentially hazardous food to the public. I needed the final piece, the link, the directive. I went into the company-wide email archive. As a management accountant, I was copied on all broad financial and scheduling memos. I searched for town hall. Helena was obsessed with the quarterly town hall meetings. They were her stage, her performance. I found an email from Helena's executive assistant, sent 2 days before the Chicago dinner. It was sent to all senior management, including the QC directors. Subject, urgent, Q3, town hall, presentation prep. Team, a reminder that all departmental reports for the town hall are due by Friday. As per Helena's directive at the leadership brunch, our Q3 focus is 100% on positive growth and market expansion. Please hold any outstanding red flag issues or internal QC concerns for post-town hall review. We need to present a clean, positive, and unified front to the company. Let's keep the presentation focused on the wins. Best, Sarah. Office of the CEO. I stared at the words. Please hold any outstanding red flag issues or internal QC concerns. It was an order, dressed in polite corporate language. It was a directive from the CEO to suppress safety concerns, to ship now and fix later or never. I clicked the small star icon, marking the email. Then I discreetly forwarded it, along with 6 others just like it, to a new, encrypted email address I had created for this purpose alone. I opened a new, encrypted Excel file on my personal Iron Key USB drive. This file would never touch Meridian's servers. I began to build my spreadsheet. Column A, date of dinner. Column B, restaurant and cost. Column C, attendees. Column D, signatory approval. Column E, food batch in question, lot. Column F, QC, flag date and contaminant. Column G, QC, release date. Column H, link to corresponding email. I populated the rows: Chicago, Atlanta, a third one in Dallas, 3 states, 3 dinners, 3 compromised food batches, 3 sets of identical signatures. Helena Cole, Jasper, Borden Lake. The CEO, the Director of Strategy, the CFO, the Holy Trinity of the fraud. I looked at the file. It was a thing of terrible, logical beauty, a structure of lies, built layer by layer. The flashy, expensive dinners were the frosting, the celebration. The lies and corporate pressure were the cake itself, dense and rich, and hidden deep inside, the final layer was the poison, the listeria and E. coli they were willing to serve to families. I hit Save As. I named the file Wedding Cake XLSX. It was tiered, it was celebratory on the outside, and it was built for one specific event. I finally understood my purpose. I wasn't just the auditor, I was the one who was going to cut it. The Wedding Cake XLSX file was my map. Now, I needed to follow the money and the microbes, and find the smoke. The first thread was the lab reports. The QC logs I had access to were the final summaries, the ones that read, cleared. I needed the raw diagnostic data. I filed an access request with the internal lab system, citing a cross-departmental billing audit to reconcile reagent supply invoices with QC testing volume. It was the perfect, practical, boring excuse. Access was granted in an hour. I went back to Lot 74B, the Chicago batch. The summary log said, Aug 9, 1430. Lot 74B, flagged. Hold initiated. Listeria suspicion. Aug 11, 0900. Lot 74B, retested, cleared. Hold released. Now I had the raw diagnostics. I found the first test ID 909A. Sample, 74B. Result, positive, L, mono. That was the flag. Then I looked for the retest. Test ID 909B. Sample, 74B. Result, negative. But something was wrong. The system metadata for the test file, the data no one ever looked at, told a different story. The sample weight for 909A was 500 Gs. The sample weight for 909B was also 500 Gs. But the protocol for a retest of the same batch required a new 1000 G sample, drawn by 2 separate technicians. This wasn't a retest. I dug deeper. I found the log for a different batch. Lot 78F, a small, organic certified run that had been tested on August 10th. Test ID 910A, sample 78F, result, negative. I compared the diagnostic signatures, the cleared retest for the contaminated batch. 909B was a perfect bite-for-bite copy of the clean test from 78F. They hadn't retested the contaminated meat. They had simply copied the negative result from a clean batch, pasted it into the log, and labeled it 74B. It was a digital cut-and-paste job, a forgery. This was the how. The $9,400 dinner wasn't just to pressure the QC manager, it was to pay for his silence while he faked a lab report. Now the dinner itself, I needed to prove they were all together, conspiring. I went to the restaurant's website, Gia's Steakhouse Chicago. Then I went to Instagram. I searched the location tag for Gia's Steakhouse, and the date, August 10th. The feed was full of people posting pictures of their cocktails and dry-aged porterhouses. I scrolled for 20 minutes, and then I found it. A local food blogger, Chi-Town Eats, had posted a panoramic video of the main dining room. "The ambiance at Gia's is unmatched," she'd written. The video panned across the room, and for 3 perfect, high-definition seconds, it swept past a private alcove. There they were, Borden Lake, the CFO, red-faced and laughing, holding a glass of red wine, Jasper, my stepbrother, leaning back in his chair, exuding arrogance, and between them, the Midwest QC manager, the man who had digitally signed the forged lab report just hours earlier. They were raising their glasses. The timestamp on the post was 9:30 p.m. The contaminated lot was, at that exact moment, sitting under a hold order. I screen recorded the video. I extracted the high-resolution still. I saved it. Next, the cover-up, the shipping invoices. This was my home turf. I pulled the manifest for Lot 74B from the logistics database. The total shipment was 20,000 units, but it wasn't one invoice. It was 4 separate invoices, for 5,000 units each. They were all dated August 11th, at 09:12, 09:01, 09:02, and 09:03. I ran a search on Meridian's internal audit protocols, the ones I'd had to memorize. Any shipment of perishable goods valued over $100,000 or weighing over 8,000 units requires a secondary, non-plant level signature from the corporate VP of Logistics. The 20,000 unit shipment was well over that limit, but 4 5,000 unit shipments were not. By splitting the dates by 1-minute intervals, the local QC manager, the one at the dinner, was able to sign off on all 4 shipments himself, bypassing the required corporate check. It was a structural, deliberate, and fraudulent override. But they weren't done. I had a sudden, cold thought. I cross-referenced the logistics database with the trucking vendor's GPS portal. I found the truck, Unit 50A. I pulled its route history for August 11th. The truck left the Chicago plant at 9:30 a.m., but it didn't take I-90, the direct interstate route. It took a winding, bizarre path along state highways, adding 3 hours and 80 miles to its journey. Why? I opened a public browser. I searched the Illinois DOT records for August 11th. There it was. The I-90 interstate, 40 miles from the plant, had a mandatory, unscheduled USDA food safety checkpoint active that day. The truck's route was a calculated detour to avoid inspection. This was the physical proof, the forged lab report, the collusive dinner, the fraudulent invoices, the GPS detour. I had an unbroken chain of evidence. I just needed the directive. I needed the order. I went back to the email archive. I had been searching for Town Hall and QC. This time, I searched for the lot number, 74B. My screen filled with dull logistics chatter, and then, one email, sent August 10th, the day of the dinner. It was from Jasper to the Midwest QC manager. Subject: stickers. John, following up on my call. The new Organic Farms campaign stickers are in. The old branding is obsolete. Helena is adamant we present a unified brand front. Make sure your team gets the new stickers on the 74B batch before it ships tomorrow. We need 100% brand consistency. Replace all the lot stickers on that batch. Best, Jasper. My blood turned to ice. It was the most brilliant, evil piece of corporate doublespeak I had ever seen. Replace lot stickers. To an outsider, it was a simple branding update, a marketing request. But to the QC manager, who was at that very moment staring at a 20,000-unit batch covered in bright red, held, "Do not ship, Listeria" stickers, it was a direct, written order. An order to cover up the biohazard warning. An order to replace the held stickers with the new Organic Farms campaign stickers. And the order came from Jasper, but it invoked Helena's name. Helena is adamant. I downloaded the raw email file, the ML, complete with its server metadata. I saved it to my encrypted drive, offline. It was time to see if the animals knew I was in the cage. I had to complete my assigned task. I wrote a linear report for Borden Lake. It was the perfect, practical bean counter report. Subject: Q3 T&E preliminary findings. I detailed $180,000 in sloppy T&E, just as he'd asked, mismatched receipts, unapproved hotel upgrades, and I included the Chicago dinner. I didn't mention the lab logs or the QC manager. I simply flagged the $9,400 receipt with a sterile note. Exceeds entertainment per diem cap by 45%. Requires secondary CFO approval per protocol. I was showing him the receipt. I was testing him. I hit send. An hour later, my desk phone rang. It was Lake's executive assistant. "Mr. Lake would like to see you." I walked to the top floor. Borden Lake was smiling when I entered, my report on his desk. He was a large, florid man who wore his suits a size too tight. "Arden, fantastic work," he boomed, his voice aggressively hearty. "This is exactly what I needed. Meticulous. You found the soft spots. All right." He tapped my report, right on the line about the Chicago dinner. He chuckled, as if at a private joke. "This is great, really great. Here's what I'll have you do. Just send me the raw sex file with your data. I'm going to take this and refine it for the final town hall presentation. No need for you to worry about the summary." His eyes were smiling, but they were dead. He was thanking me for finding the evidence so that he could personally bury it. He was taking the file, taking my name off it, and refining the 45% overage into a rounding error. "Of course, Mr. Lake," I said. "I'll send it right over." I walked back to my desk. I felt a cold vibration in my pocket. My personal cell phone. I looked at it. A private, encrypted message from Jasper. "Jasper, heard you're making waves in finance. Good job." Jasper, "Just remember to be a team player." Jasper, "Don't make things hard for Mom." I stared at the screen. He was warning me. They knew I was looking at the dinner expenses. They didn't know what I'd found, but they were nervous. And then, I watched as the 3 dots appeared. Jasper is typing. They vanished. The message, "Don't make things hard for Mom," disappeared. He had deleted it. He was scared. He'd sent a threat and then, in a moment of cowardice, retracted it, but he was too late. I had already taken a screenshot. That night, I went to a 24-hour notary. I created a single, encrypted zip file. In it, I placed the wedding cake XLSX file, the audio file from my graduation, the Instagram video file and the still frame, the GPS route data, the fraudulent invoice images, the raw EML file of the replace lot stickers email, and the screenshot of Jasper's deleted message. I had the entire package digitally notarized, creating an immutable timestamp, proof of when I had assembled the case. I sent the package to Maya Trent. She called me at 11:30 p.m. Her voice was sharp, awake, electric. "This is a case, Arden, a real case. The GPS route matched to the DOT checkpoint is inspired. The split invoices are a classic RICO predicate. The email is good. But what?" I said, my stomach tightening. "But it's deniable," she said. "A good defense attorney, and your mother will have the best, will say this is all coincidence. They'll say, replace lot stickers was literally a branding request. They'll say the QC manager is a friend, and the dinner was just a dinner. They'll say the GPS route was avoiding traffic. They will paint you as a bitter, vengeful daughter. They'll say you're practical, and you don't understand strategy, and you're misinterpreting things." A long, cold silence stretched between us. She was right. It was a mountain of circumstantial evidence, but they could still create doubt. "So it's not enough," I said. It wasn't a question. "It's not enough to trigger the 51% clause," Maya corrected. "Not cleanly. We need something they cannot explain away. We need something that isn't data. We need something that is an act." I looked at my desk. Pinned to the corkboard was the company-wide memo for the Q4 town hall meeting. It was next week. The theme, Helena's personal choice, was printed in large, friendly letters. Meridian. Family first. I understand, I said, my voice quiet. This is all just smoke. I need the fire. I need a camera shot. Be careful, Arden, Maya warned. You're in the building. They think you're one of them, but they're getting nervous. They're not just watching the exits anymore. They're watching the hallways. I hung up. I looked at the memo. Helena's stage. Her big performance. The one where she'd ordered all red flags to be hidden. A camera shot, I whispered to the empty room. Or a microphone. The auditorium in the Norcrest Tower was packed. Over 700 employees, from the executive floor down to the processing line workers, were seated. A sea of expectant faces. Giant, professionally printed banners hung from the ceiling, all bearing the same message in a soft, welcoming font. Meridian, family first. On stage, a podium was set, flanked by Helena, Jasper, and Borden Lake. They looked relaxed, powerful, masters of their universe. Helena was wearing a bright, cobalt blue dress, a beacon of leadership. She was in her element, smiling, waving to people she recognized in the front rows. I was not on stage. I was at a small, black-draped tech table to the side, where a junior marketing associate and I were tasked with running the presentation slides. I was the practical accountant, the detail-oriented team player, just clicking next on the PowerPoint. My personal, encrypted USB drive was in my pocket, warm against my leg. My work-issued laptop sat on the table. At 10:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the show, Borden Lake's assistant had rushed over and handed me a standard company USB drive. Here, she'd panted. This is the final, adjusted financial slide deck from Mr. Lake. He said to use only this file. I took it. I plugged it into the laptop. The file was named Q4 Town Hall Finals V3 PTX. I opened it. It was exactly what I expected. A series of bright, meaningless pie charts and bar graphs showing record growth and cost optimization synergies, the $9,400 Chicago dinner, the $7,200 Atlanta dinner, all the wedding cake expenses, had been refined. Just as he'd promised, they were gone, absorbed into a single, massive, innocent-looking blue bar labeled Marketing and T&E. It was a clean, beautiful lie. Looks perfect, I said to the assistant. At 11:00 a.m., the lights dimmed. A bright, optimistic orchestral score swelled over the speakers. Helena stepped up to the podium. Good morning, family, she beamed. The room burst into applause. She spoke for 20 minutes. She spoke of trust and integrity. She spoke of the Meridian Standard and how we treat our customers and our employees like our own family. She told an anecdote about Jasper as a boy, sharing his lunch, a story of his innate generosity. I watched her, my hand resting on the laptop. My heart was not racing. It was slow, heavy, and methodical. Each beat was a hammer driving a nail. But a family, she continued, her voice growing serious, is built on a foundation of strength, a foundation of security. And I am so proud to say that our financial house has never been more in order. She turned to me, smiling. Arden, my own daughter, who has been doing such wonderful work in our finance department, is going to help us with the presentation. Arden? This was my cue. I stood up. The junior marketing associate looked at me, ready to advance the slides. I've got it, I said quietly. I walked from the tech table to the small presentation laptop on the lectern next to the main podium. I had to unplug the official USB drive to make room for my own. The marketing associate looked nervous. Is that the right file? Mr. Lake gave me an updated one, I said. I slid my encrypted USB drive into the port. The drive was partitioned. The first partition, the one that opened automatically, contained one file, Q4 Town Hall Finals v3.pptx. It looked identical to his. I clicked it open. The first slide flashed onto the two massive 20-foot screens flanking the stage. A Foundation of Strength, Q3 Q4 Financials. It was the title slide Lake had created. Helena smiled, not noticing a thing. As you can see, She talked through the first slide of lies, and the second, then she got to the third, the summary slide. "This quarter has been about transparency," she declared, her voice ringing with false pride. "And I want to share something with all of you, something personal. This wasn't in the script. There has been chatter, rumors, about our family. I believe in facing these things head on. Arden, go to the next slide, please." I clicked, the screen changed. It was a simple black background with white text, a personal note. "It seems," Helena said, her voice dripping with manufactured sincerity, "that some people have misinterpreted a private family moment, so I want to play something for you, a recording, to show you how words can be twisted." My blood stopped. She had the audio. She was going to play it herself and frame it as a joke. She was going to spin it first. She nodded at the tech booth, the orchestral music faded, and then a sound file played, but it was choppy, edited. "Wish you were never born." The sound was tinny. It cut immediately to a laugh track, like a sitcom. It was a distorted, butchered version. "A simple joke at a happy family dinner," Helena said, laughing. "A little dark humor between a mother and a daughter she adores. But some bitter, unhappy people we have had to let go, are trying to use it against us." She was neutralizing my first move. She knew. She didn't know what I had, but she knew I was the threat. I looked at the file on my USB drive. My hand moved to the mouse. My file, the real one, was still open in the background. Her audio file was a separate embed. She wasn't finished. "So, to my daughter, Arden, I want to say this publicly." She turned to me. The spotlight swung, catching us both. 700 people were watching. "Arden, I am so sorry," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I am sorry that my joke was overheard and twisted by people who want to hurt this company, who want to hurt you." It was a brilliant move. She was apologizing to me, framing me as the victim, and in one move, cementing her image as a caring mother and discrediting the very audio I was planning to use. She smiled at me. "I love you, darling. Now, let's get back to the real data, shall we? Next slide." She was waiting. She expected me to click to the next slide of her refined financials. I didn't. My hand was steady on the mouse. I didn't click next. I hit Alt-Tab. On the giant screens, her "A Personal Note" slide vanished, replaced by my own presentation, which had been waiting in the background. It was just a black screen. And then, a new audio file began to play. Not her choppy, edited file, my file. The raw, unedited, high-fidelity recording from my phone at the Stonebrook Grill. The sound was crystal clear. It echoed through the silent auditorium. "We wish you were never born." The silence that followed was absolute. There was no laugh track. There was just the cold, ambient noise of the restaurant, the clinking of a fork, and then, the worst part, the low, snickering laughter of the family, the clear sound of my stepfather clearing his throat, the sound of their complicity. A woman in the third row gasped. It was the only sound in the room. Helena's smile didn't just freeze, it broke. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly pale mask of makeup. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice a dry rasp. That's a fake. That's an audio deep fake. Security, turn it off." But I still had the mouse. Before the tech booth could react, I clicked to the next slide. The audio vanished, replaced by a grainy, time-stamped video. The camera footage from the Norcrest storage corridor, the roll-up door, the name B12. Next slide, a high-resolution photo of the iron box, the Cole & Rivers 1998 seal. Next slide, the 12% stock certificate, my name, Arden M. Cole, highlighted in yellow. Next slide, the 1998 contingency clause. The legal text filled the screen. I had highlighted 2 phrases in blood red: financial malfeasance affecting food safety, and 51% temporary controlling interest. Helena was shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no," into the hot mic. Next slide. The replace lot stickers email. Jasper's name as the sender. The line, "Helena is adamant," was circled. Next slide. The wedding cake, XLSX file, visualized. A heat map of the United States. 3 red dots, glowing like tumors over Chicago, Atlanta, and Dallas. Chicago. Team building dinner, 9/1400. Next to it, Lot 74B flagged, Listeria. Atlanta. Community dinner, 7/200. Next to it, Lot 81A flagged, E. Co-Li. The logos of the steakhouses repeated on the screen like an oil slick, a pattern of corruption. Next slide, the Instagram screenshot, Borden Lake, Jasper, and the QC manager, their faces clear as day, raising their glasses in a toast. The timestamp, matching the date of the hold order, was blown up in the corner. There was a sound, a loud percussive thud, that echoed through the PA system. Borden Lake had dropped his microphone. It rolled, feedback screeching, across the stage. His face was the color of ash. I looked at Jasper. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at the exit. His phone was in his hand, vibrating so hard it seemed to jump. He wasn't running. He was just leaving. He turned his back to the audience, to his mother, and walked quickly off the stage and disappeared through the emergency exit. The room was in chaos. People were standing, yelling, pointing. Helena lunged for the laptop, but I was faster. I stepped in front of it, to the main podium. I grabbed the microphone that Lake had abandoned, cutting off the feedback. I turned it on. My voice, my real voice, not the practical whisper, boomed through the auditorium. It was cold, clear, and perfectly amplified. "My name is Arden Cole. That was not a deep fake." Helena had stopped. She was staring at me, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending hatred. Per the original founder's Articles of Incorporation, Article 4, Section B, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Based on prima facie evidence of systemic, documented financial fraud directly endangering public food safety, I am formally activating my rights as the 12% founding shareholder. I looked out at the 700 employees, who were frozen, staring at me. I am activating my 51% temporary controlling interest. You bitch! Helena shrieked. "Security! Get her off the stage! Get her out of my building!" 2 uniformed security guards, who had been standing by the wings, finally reacted. They started moving, climbing the steps, their hands reaching for me. And then, the main doors of the auditorium, at the back of the room, slammed open. The light from the hallway flooded in. It wasn't the police. It was Maya Trent. She was flanked by 2 men in dark, severe suits, each carrying a heavy leather briefcase. The security guards on stage stopped. They turned. They saw her. They were Meridian security, but they were also Norcrest citizens. They knew exactly who Maya Trent was. Their hands dropped from their belts. Maya didn't run. She walked. She walked down the central aisle, her heels clicking a steady, relentless rhythm on the floor. The crowd parted for her like water. She didn't stop at the front row. She walked up the small stairs, onto the stage, past the cowering Borden Lake, past the apoplectic Helena Cole. She walked directly to the podium and stood next to me. She took the second microphone. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice like ice. "My name is Maya Trent. I am the legal counsel for the 51% controlling interest of Meridian Harvest Foods. This town hall is now a special shareholders meeting." The auditorium was a pressure cooker. The air was thick with 700 held breaths. Helena stood, frozen, a statue of cobalt blue and white-hot rage, her face a rictus of disbelief. Borden Lake was visibly sweating, his eyes darting between me and the floor, a man looking for a trapdoor. Helena took one step, then another. The sound of her heels on the stage was sharp, like glass breaking. She didn't lunge for me. She glided, a shark moving in for the kill. stopping just inches from my face. The spotlight still held us both. A public stage for a private execution. She leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper, a sound meant only for me, but the microphone at the podium was still hot, catching the sibilance. "You are destroying this family," she hissed, the words full of jagged edges. "You are destroying everything." I didn't flinch. I didn't lean away. I held her gaze, my own eyes as cold and flat as the data on the screen behind me. I turned my head just slightly, my lips brushing the metal grill of the microphone. My voice was not a whisper, it was a statement, amplified to every corner of the room, to every employee, to the back wall. "I am saving our customers," I said, my voice cutting through her poison. "And I am saving the family name." A new sound, click-clack, click-clack. Maya Trent had moved from my side. She stepped to the center podium, placing a heavy, leather-bound document on its surface. It was the original Colin Rivers 1998 partnership agreement, the one from the iron box. "For the members of the board present in the front row," Maya announced, her voice a legal scalpel. The 5 independent directors, who had been sitting as guests of honor, were now a terrified jury. They looked at each other, trapped. "I am reading from the original Articles of Incorporation," Maya continued, "which have been verified by our firm and are legally binding, having never been dissolved by the 12% founding shareholder. Article 4, Section B. The bearer of the 12% founding share, Arden M. Cole, holds the right to convert this stake into a 51% temporary controlling interest." She read the entire clause, word for word. Each syllable was a nail in Helena's corporate coffin. "This conversion," Maya concluded, looking up, "is not a request. It is not a motion. It is a contractual activation. As of 11:32 a.m., Arden Cole holds 51% of the voting rights of this corporation. This town hall is now a legally convened emergency session of the shareholders. The first order of business is to acknowledge this transfer of power and proceed accordingly." She turned to the 5 board members. "We require a temporary chair for this new session, as the previous CEO is the subject of the investigation." One of the directors, a man named Harrison, looked like he was going to be sick. The bylaws. "The bylaws have been superseded by the 51% activation. Mr. Harrison," Maya said, her voice like Arctic ice. "Do I have a motion to install Arden Cole as temporary chairperson for the duration of this emergency session?" Harrison looked at Helena. She was vibrating with a rage so profound it was silent. He looked at me. He looked at the data on the screen. He was a man calculating his own legal liability. "So moved," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Seconded," another director mumbled. "All in favor?" Maya asked, a few weak eyes from the front row. "All opposed?" Silence. Helena's jaw was clenched so tight a muscle pulsed in her cheek. "The motion carries," Maya said. "Ms. Cole, the chair is yours." I stepped back to the podium. This was it, the moment. I was no longer the girl at the edge of the frame. I was the one holding the camera. "Thank you," I said. "The chair recognizes the first motion. A motion is put forth to immediately and indefinitely suspend CEO Helena Cole and CFO Borden Lake, pending the results of a full, independent, and transparent forensic audit, to be conducted by a third-party firm not previously affiliated with Meridian Harvest Foods." "You can't," Helena snarled. "The motion is on the floor," I said, ignoring her. I... Borden Lake tried to speak. He looked at Helena, then at me. "I will cooperate. I will cooperate fully." He was abandoning her. The first rat off the ship. "Your cooperation is noted, Mr. Lake," I said. "Your suspension stands. We will now vote." I looked at the board members. "Mr. Harrison?" "Aye," he said, his voice stronger. "Director Pham?" "Aye." "Director Singh?" "Aye." The ayes came down the line, a series of dominoes falling. "And as the 51% controlling interest," I said, my voice ringing out. The chair votes AI. The motion carries. Helena Cole and Borden Lake are hereby suspended from all duties, all access to company property, and all financial authority, effective immediately. The chair recognizes a second motion, I continued, not giving anyone a second to breathe. A motion to remove Jasper from any and all authority over logistics, shipping, and quality control, and to place him on mandatory administrative leave, pending the same investigation. Vote, I commanded. It was unanimous. Aye. The men in dark suits who had entered with Maya moved. They weren't lawyers. They were a private, bonded security detail. One of them stepped quietly next to a still vibrating Helena. The other walked over to Borden Lake, who simply sank into his chair, a puppet with its strings cut. The doors at the back of the auditorium burst open again. This time, it wasn't Maya. It was flashes, a blinding percussive storm of light, the local Norcrest News, the Business Journal, a stringer for a national paper. Someone had called them. Maya had called them. The press was here, cameras rolling, to document the fall. Helena saw the cameras, her eyes, which had been full of hate, now filled with a new, different kind of terror, public humiliation. What is the company's official position? A man from the PR department, pale and shaking, had run up to the side of the stage. He was looking at me. Ms. Cole, what is the statement? I looked at him. I looked at the cameras flashing at the back. I looked at the 700 employees, all of whom were now holding up their cell phones, their own small cameras, recording. 2 sentences, I said, my voice clear. I leaned into the microphone so the press and every employee could hear. 1, we have uncovered serious internal issues. We are investigating them thoroughly. 2, we are effective immediately, prioritizing customer safety above all else. Full stop. The PR man just nodded, his eyes wide, and ran. You won't get away with this, Helena shrieked. The sight of the cameras, the finality of my statement, had broken her. The mask was gone. This was not the CEO. This was just a woman screaming. This is my company, my life. You ungrateful? I gave you everything. She lunged, not for me. She lunged for the microphone, to get her narrative back, to tell her story. Her security detail caught her arm. He was gentle, but firm. Ma'am, please. But her lunge, her scream, was the image. The flashes erupted, turning the scene into a series of fractured, silent film stills. Helena, her mouth open in a rictus, cobalt blue dress twisted, the security guard's hand on her arm. Me, standing calm at the podium, untouched. It was the shot, the end of her reign, captured in a burst of light. I turned away from her, from the flashes, from the noise. I looked at the audience. They were stunned, silent, recording. And then I saw her. In the wings, a woman in a black polo shirt and a headset, a stagehand, a member of the AV crew, was weeping. She wasn't crying from the drama. It was a cry of deep, profound pain. She was holding her phone, her thumb tracing a picture on her screen, a picture of a small child. Our eyes met. She mouthed 2 words at me, her face wrecked with a grief I instantly understood. My son. My blood ran cold. Lot 81A, E, Coli, Atlanta, or 74B, or the one in Dallas. It didn't matter. This wasn't data on a screen anymore. This was the woman whose child had eaten my mother's poison. This was the human cost of those team-building dinners. Helena was still yelling behind me, a soundtrack of her own demise. The cameras were still flashing, a frantic, hungry pulse. I stepped away from the podium. I walked past the security detail. I walked past my mother, as if she were a ghost, as if she were not there. I walked to the edge of the stage, to the woman in black. The auditorium, the press, my mother, they all fell silent, watching me. I stood in front of this woman, this employee, this mother. I didn't say I'm sorry. I didn't offer a platitude. I just stood there, in the full light, in front of 700 people and a dozen cameras, and I bowed, a deep, formal, respectful bow. I bowed to her. I bowed to her son. I bowed to the truth. I held the bow for a long, silent moment. I did not look at the cameras. I did not look at my mother. I only looked at the floor, in a gesture of absolute, public deference to her pain. When I rose, the flashbulbs were firing. But they had the wrong picture. They thought the story was about Helena's fall. I knew, and the woman knew, that the story was about this. This was the only thing in the room that was real. The first order I signed, as temporary chair, was not from the CEO's desk. It was from the CFO's, a room that now felt like an abandoned crime scene. I sat at Borden Lake's terminal, my login credentials granting me God-level access to the financial mainframe. I found the expense system, the line item, G&A 405B, community and team building. It was a $3.2 million annual budget, a slush fund. I navigated to authorized users, Helena Cole, card 001, black, unlimited, Jasper, card 002, platinum, 100K limit, Borden Lake, card 003, platinum, 75K limit. My fingers were precise on the keyboard. I selected user 001, Helena Cole. I clicked deactivate card. A dialog box appeared. Reason for deactivation. I typed, suspended pending forensic audit for financial malfeasance. I repeated the process for card 002 and 003. I hit enter somewhere in the city, in Helena's Louis Vuitton wallet, her corporate black card, her primary symbol of effortless power, turned into a useless piece of plastic. It was a souvenir now, a memento of a reign that had ended. She wouldn't discover it until the next time she tried to buy a $500 lunch. The quiet humiliation of the declined message would be the first bill to come due. I moved into her office. I had to. It was the seat of power, and it could not be left vacant. I didn't change the furniture. I didn't touch her photos. I just had the locks changed. I spent the first night there, not sleeping, but auditing. I went through the private file cabinets she kept locked, not the corporate filings, but the old, forgotten history, in a bottom drawer, under a pile of retired letterhead. I found what I was looking for, a file labeled Brand Philosophy, 1998. It was a memo from my grandfather, Walter. It was from before the Meridian name, back when it was still Cole and Rivers. His handwriting was strong. The ink faded. He had written, "A brand name must be a promise. It must be the truth. We sell food. It must be honest. If we call it Family Table, it must be something we would serve, without hesitation, at our own." I looked at his words. Family Table. The name of the deli line that was currently under a nationwide recall. The name of the product that had sent a stagehand's child to the hospital. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with the entire marketing department. They filed in, their faces pale, looking at me sitting at Helena's desk like an undertaker. The department head, a man Helena had hired for his loyalty, started, "Ms. Cole, Arden, we have a crisis plan ready. We're prepared to issue statements, offer coupons, a full 'We're Still Family' campaign to rebuild trust." "No," I said. The room fell silent. "You're right. It's a crisis. But it's a crisis of truth. The name Family Table is a lie. We will no longer use it." "But the brand recognition," he stammered. "It's our flagship. It polls at 90% positive. It's polling at 100% listeria," I said. The room froze. "Effective immediately. The entire deli and cured meats line is being rebranded. The new name is Safety First. That is the promise. That is the truth." I told them the new packaging would be clinical, white, green, and black. No more soft. Warm photos of smiling families. Just a clear, bold, Safety First logo. I wanted the packaging to look like a surgeon's office. "Pull everything," I ordered. "This is not a PR move. This is a statement of fact. Go." They fled. That afternoon, I went back to the ledgers. I went back to the team building fund. and I found the charge. May 22nd, Stonebrook Grill, $2,800. My graduation dinner. I pulled Helena's corporate calendar for that day. The entry read, Personal, Arden's graduation dinner, 7 p.m. She had documented it herself. She knew it was personal, and she expensed it to the company. But I wasn't done. I pulled the corporate tax filings for that quarter. Borden Lake, with Helena's approval, had claimed that $2,800 as a 100% tax-deductible business meal. It wasn't just theft, it was tax fraud. I picked up the phone. I called the new acting head of legal. I'm sending you a receipt and a tax filing. I want a letter drafted to the Stonebrook Grill, informing them that we are investigating their role in processing fraudulent corporate expenses and that we will be reporting them to the state. I want a second letter, a voluntary disclosure, sent to the IRS, correcting our filing, and I want a third letter, a formal demand for repayment, sent to Helena Cole's personal residence, for the full $2,800 plus penalties and interest. I want it sent by courier. Today. I was not just reclaiming the money, I was dismantling the lie. Piece by piece, receipt by receipt. I worked late. The office was dark. The city a grid of lights below me. My personal phone buzzed on the glass desk. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. 5 letters. Arden, please. I stared at the word. Please. It was a word I had never heard her use with me. It was not a word in her vocabulary. Please was a word for subordinates. It was a word for the weak. It was a word you used when your lawyers had told you that you had no other leverage. It was the first time she had ever asked me for anything. My thumbs moved over the screen. I thought of the restaurant, the steak knives, the laughter, the taste of metal and cake. I typed one sentence. Please was all I wanted at dinner. I hit send. The delivery receipt turned blue. Read. No reply came. The next day, Jasper appeared. He didn't use the front door. He came up the service elevator, bypassing the new security protocols. He just appeared at my office door, his expensive suit rumpled, his brilliant eyes wide and bloodshot. Arden, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. You have to stop this. You don't understand. This isn't just Mom. This is the investors, the supply chain. It's everything. You're pulling the plug on everything. Hello, Jasper, I said. Are you here on official business? This is private, he hissed, trying to shut the door. I don't have private conversations anymore, I said. I buzzed my assistant. Please ask Ms. Trent and a member of her team to join me in conference room 4. Jasper's face went white. You're bringing a lawyer? I'm the acting chair of a corporation under investigation. Jasper, I don't speak to anyone involved in that investigation without counsel present. You, of all people, should understand strategy. He backed away, shaking his head. You're not Arden. You're something else. I'm practical, I said. He left. An hour later, a formal letter arrived from the most expensive corporate law firm in Norcrest. They were representing Borden Lake. They requested a discreet and amicable negotiation and full preservation of Mr. Lake's professional standing. I forwarded it to Maya. My instructions were simple. Tell them discreet and amicable are off the table. Tell them Mr. Lake has 24 hours to accept an offer of full cooperation in exchange for a recommendation of leniency, or he will be named as the primary co-conspirator alongside Helena. Send them the wedding cake file. Send them everything. I'm not negotiating with him. I'm offering him a plea. The local paper hit the stands the next morning. I had it delivered to the office. The headline was not the explosion I had expected. Helena's face was on the front page, but the title was sober. Meridian conducts sweeping internal investigation. Founder's granddaughter takes helm. Pledges safety first. My 2-sentence press release had worked. I hadn't denied. I hadn't spun. I had confirmed the problem and stated the solution. There was no uncertainty. The market, it turns out, hates spin more than it hates bad news. It just wants the truth. The company's credit line held. Our vendors didn't flee. The ship was not sinking. It was just, finally, being cleaned. That Friday, I stayed in the office. The building was empty. The entire executive floor was a ghost town. I walked into the main boardroom, the one where the town hall had happened. The banners were gone. The stage was gone. It was just a big, dark, silent room. I stood in the center, where the podium had been. I took out my personal phone. I opened the encrypted folder. I found the file. Graduation dinner, audio, 0522. I pressed play. I didn't use an earbud. I let the sound play out, echoing in the vast, empty corporate space. We wish you were never born. The tinny, distant laughter of my relatives, the clinking of glasses, the sound of my own silence. I listened to the entire file, start to finish. It was the reason, it was the motive, it was the spark. It was the audio file that had documented my humiliation. The file finished. Silence returned to the boardroom. I looked at the phone in my hand. The recording had served its purpose. It was the why, but the why no longer mattered. All that mattered was the what, the audit, the recall, the truth. The audio file was a private pain. My work was a public necessity. My thumb moved to the delete button. A prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this item? My answer was already made. I pressed delete. The file was gone. I was no longer the girl at that dinner. I was the woman in this boardroom. I turned off the lights and went back to work. 10 days. That's how long it took for the independent auditors, a ruthless team from Deloitte I had personally hired, to release their preliminary findings. 10 days of them sleeping on cots in the finance department. Their presence a cloud of quiet, competent terror. The emergency board meeting was not held in the auditorium. It was held in the 40th floor glass-walled boardroom. It was 9:00 a.m. I was at the head of the table, in my seat. Helena was there. She was required to be. She was not at the table. She sat in a chair against the wall, flanked by two lawyers who looked like they were carved from expensive, polished granite. She was a spectator at her own execution. Borden Lake was not present. His lawyers were. The lead auditor, a woman with zero inflection in her voice, read from her report. Our preliminary findings are conclusive. We have found multiple systemic instances of non-compliance with internal QC protocols. We have found digital evidence of lab report forgery. We have found direct temporal and financial links between executive T&E expenditures and the subsequent suppression of adverse safety findings. In short, we have confirmed direct willful interference with the company's food safety testing procedures, originating from the executive level. The word interference hung in the sterile, air-conditioned room. It was such a clean word for such a dirty act. The board members, Harrison, Pham, Singh, just stared at the report in front of them. They had been exposed. Their lack of oversight was now a permanent record. When the auditor finished, Maya Trent spoke. She stood, a shark in a pinstriped suit. In light of this preliminary report, she said, her voice cutting through the silence, and in accordance with the 51% controlling interest, I am putting forth a motion. We move to transfer all temporary operational authority from the current board to a newly formed Meridian Safety Committee, effective immediately, for a period of 90 days, or until the full independent audit is complete, whichever is later. This committee will have full, unilateral power to act in the company's best interest. We nominate Arden Cole as its chairperson. It was a coup, a legal, binding, necessary coup. The board was being neutered. I was being handed the keys, not just as a temporary shareholder, but as the head of the entire operation. A vote is required, I said, my voice flat. Before the vote could be called, Helena's lawyer whispered in her ear. She stood up. This was her last, required statement. She walked to the end of the table. She did not look at me. She looked at the board, at Harrison and Pham. Men she had played golf with, men whose children's birthdays she remembered. Her voice was not the shriek from the auditorium. It was low, pleading, and practiced. It was her final performance. David, Mina, she said, her voice thick with a forced, noble sadness. You all know me. You know what I've built. Did I push the boundaries? Yes. Did I make hard decisions in a tough market? Yes. She put her hand on her heart. But I did it to protect this company. I did it to protect you. To protect our 700 employees. A full-scale recall. A hint of a contamination. That's not a blip for a company our size. It's a death sentence. It's bankruptcy. It's 700 jobs gone. I did what I had to do to protect the family, our Meridian family, to protect our employees. It was a good speech, a compelling one. The mother, protecting her children from a harsh truth. Harrison was wavering. I could see it. He wanted to believe her. I did not make a speech in return. I did not argue. I picked up the small, black remote for the room's presentation screen. The auditor's report was still displayed. I clicked. The report vanished, replaced by the email I had found, the one she had sent, the one that was not about protecting employees. The screen was filled with her own words, her own email signature. Subject: Urgent. Q3 Town Hall. Presentation Prep Team. Please hold any outstanding red flag issues or internal QC concerns for post-town hall review. We need to present a clean, positive, and unified front. I clicked again. The next email. Subject: Shipping. Ship now. Fix later. We can't let this quarter's numbers soften. Ship now. Fix later. The words just hung there. There was no argument left. There was no defense. There was no mother protecting her family. There was only a CEO, in writing, giving a direct order to ignore safety in favor of quarterly numbers. Helena looked at the screen. Her face, for the first time, crumpled. It wasn't rage. It was nothing. It was the face of a person who had just seen the end. She had been checkmated by her own words. The vote, I said into the silence. I, Harrison said, his voice a whisper. I, Pham said. I. As the 51% controlling interest, I said, the chair votes A, the motion passes, the Meridian Safety Committee is now in effect. Helena's lawyers gently touched her arm. She was dismissed. She turned, a ghost in a $1,000 suit, and walked to the massive glass doors of the boardroom. The doors slid shut behind her with a soft, expensive sigh. I watched her go. For a second, the reflection of the boardroom, of me, at the head of the table, was superimposed over her diminishing figure. She was a small, dark shape, swallowed by the bright, reflected light of the office she had built. She was on the outside. I turned back to my laptop. I had work to do. I did not wait. I pulled a stack of pre-prepared documents from my briefcase. The first one was a termination of contract. I signed it. It was the master agreement with the restaurant group that owned Gia's Steakhouse and the Atlanta Steakhouse. The dinner partners. Send this to legal, I said to Maya. And I want a new budget drawn up by noon. The entire $3.2 million team-building budget is to be reallocated, effective immediately. 100% of it is transferred to a new fund. Independent, third-party auditing. We are going to pay another firm to do nothing but double-check our own labs, 24/7. The second document was Jasper's file. He had been suspended. He had been silent for 10 days. As if on cue, there was a soft knock. My assistant peered in. Mr. Jasper is here. He says it's urgent. Send him in, I said. The board members were still gathering their papers, shell-shocked. They watched as Jasper entered. He was not the man from the elevator. He was pale, thin. He had been through 10 days of hell. He didn't speak to the board. He spoke only to me. Arden, he said. His voice was quiet. I get it. I know what I did, what we did. He looked down at his hands. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I grew up in this company. It's the only thing I know. I want to start over, the right way. Put me on the loading dock. Put me in the trucks. I don't care. I want to learn it the way Grandpa Walter did. I looked at him, the brilliant son, the bully. He was broken. And maybe, just maybe, he was sincere. But sincerity wasn't my currency. "You will report to the new head of logistics," I said. "Your title will be trainee. You will undergo a full 6-month retraining program. You will be subject to weekly performance reviews and zero-tolerance supervision. Your pay will be at the trainee level. If you are 1 minute late or one form is filled out incorrectly, you are terminated. Do you understand?" He looked up, a flicker of something, gratitude, or just shock, in his eyes. He just nodded. "Yes, thank you." "That's all?" I said. He turned and left. My phone buzzed, an email from Borden Lake's attorney. "Mr. Lake formally submits his resignation." I forwarded it to HR and Maya. "Accept it," I wrote, "on the non-negotiable condition that he signs this attached affidavit, agreeing to cooperate fully and truthfully with all ongoing investigations, both internal and federal. If he refuses, we proceed with a civil suit." He would sign. I turned back to my laptop. I opened a new company-wide broadcast email. I was not addressing the board. I was addressing the 700. I attached the new, formal, ironclad, Meridian Safety and Accountability Protocol. It was 30 pages long. It detailed the new independent testing. It detailed the new, anonymous, and legally protected whistleblower hotline. It detailed the immediate and permanent dissolution of the community and team-building budget. I hit send. Across the building, in 700 different cubicles, on 700 different phones, a small bell chimed. Policy update. In a single minute, the entire structure of the company had been rewritten. The era of ship now, fix later was over. The era of safety first had begun. I stood up. The board members filed out, silent, avoiding my eyes. Maya gave me a short, sharp nod and left with her team. I was alone. I walked to the massive, floor-to-ceiling windows, the same windows Helena had stood at, a queen surveying her kingdom. It was almost noon. I looked down at Norcrest. The cars were like tiny ants. The people, microscopic. It was just a small, working-class city. It wasn't a kingdom. It wasn't a backdrop for a CEO's ambition. It was a stage where 700 people were now working, confused, scared, but, for the first time, safe. The lights of the city weren't just lights. They were offices. They were homes. They were the customers who had been eating our food. I had turned the stage into a lab, and I was the one in the white coat. It was 6 p.m. The boardroom was dark, the city lights just beginning to glitter against the glass. The war was over. The occupation had begun. I gathered my things, my briefcase, my jacket, and the small, black encrypted USB drive, my grandfather's key, my weapon. I did not take the private executive elevator. I took the main bank, the one the employees used, the one the stagehand used. The ride down from the 40th floor was silent, a smooth, pressurized descent. I watched the numbers decrease. 30, 20, 10, L. The stainless steel doors slid open with a soft, clean ding. The main lobby was vast, marble and glass, echoing with the residual energy of the day. Most people had gone home, fleeing the uncertainty, whispering about the coup they had just witnessed, eager to get home and tell their families. She was waiting for me. I did not recognize her at first. Away from the shadows of the stage, it was the woman from the AV crew, the stagehand whose son had gotten sick. She was not crying anymore. She was just standing near the main security desk, holding 2 simple, white paper cups, the kind from the water cooler. She saw me. Our eyes met across the expanse of marble. She did not look at me like a savior. She looked at me like a survivor, like someone who had been in the trenches and recognized a fellow soldier. I walked toward her, my footsteps the only sound in the huge space. She held out one of the paper cups. It was just water. "I heard what you did," she said. Her voice was rough, tired. "The family table name, the safety first. My son, he's okay. He was sick for a week. We thought it was just the stomach flu. Then I saw your presentation." I took the cup. My hand was steady. "I'm sorry," I said. The words felt small, inadequate. "It wasn't your fault," she said, her eyes hard and clear. "You were the only one who stopped it." She raised her own flimsy paper cup. Her hand was shaking, just slightly. "They always toast to profit and family," she said, her voice laced with a decade of quiet bitterness. "I'll drink to something real." She held the cup up. "To safety." I raised my cup. It felt heavier than any champagne flute. This was not a celebration. It was a contract. I did not say cheers. I did not make a speech. I just nodded. We drank. The water was cold, tasting of paper and minerals. It was the best toast I had ever had. She nodded at me, a quick, sharp gesture of acknowledgement, and then she turned and walked away, toward the employee exit, her shift over. I stood alone in the lobby, the paper cup still in my hand. I walked toward the main entrance, a massive wall of revolving glass doors. To the right of the doors, on the main lobby wall, was the centerpiece, the corporate art. It was a massive backlit photograph, 10 feet tall. The official Meridian Family First photo. It was a picture of Helena, Jasper, and Robert, all laughing in a sun-drenched field, holding a picnic basket full of Meridian products. It was a lie, rendered in high definition. I stopped in front of it. I looked at the smiling faces, the faces of the people who had poisoned children for profit, the faces of the people who had wished I was never born. The glass over the photograph was highly reflective. It acted as a mirror. I saw the empty lobby behind me, and I saw myself, standing in front of the image. My reflection was superimposed over the fake family. I was standing directly in the center of the frame, my dark suit bisecting Helena's laughing face. I remembered the photos in the hallway of her house, the ones where I was always at the edge, the bookend, the appendix. I looked at my own face. My eyes were tired, but they were clear. I was not smiling. For the first time in my life, I was at the exact center of the frame, and I had put myself there. My pocket buzzed. I pulled out my phone. A new email. It was an automated notification from the corporate system, sent to all board members and key officers. Subject: Notification. Governance. Update. This email is to confirm that temporary operational authority has been successfully transferred to the Meridian Safety Committee. Per the emergency vote, all executive protocols are now routed to the committee chairperson, A. Cole, for approval. It was done. The system had accepted the change. The audit was real. The power was secure. There was nothing left to prove. I opened my text messages. I found Maya's name. My message was 2 words. We're done. I hit send. I looked back at the reflection, at my face covering my mother's. I thought about her, about the graduation dinner, about a lifetime of being practical while Jasper was brilliant, a lifetime of being told I wasn't wanted. I thought about the stagehand's son, about the listeria and the E. coli, about the GPS routes and the forged lab reports. I leaned in, my face just inches from the glass. I looked into my own eyes. I whispered it, so low the vast, empty lobby couldn't hear. A secret, just for me. I wasn't born to be wanted. My reflection stared back, unblinking. I was born to be necessary. As if responding to the words, the automatic lobby sensors kicked in. The sun had finally set outside, and the main overhead lights, which had been at half power, now brightened to their full, clinical intensity. Click. The entire lobby was flooded with bright, white, honest light. I crumpled the paper cup in my fist. I reached into my pocket and touched the small, hard rectangle of the USB drive. The key, the proof, the weapon. I didn't need it anymore. It was just a piece of plastic. I left it there. I turned my back on the photograph. I walked to the revolving doors, pushing my way out into the cold, clean night air. The revolving door hissed shut behind me. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and give it a boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.